My name is Sophia Hartwell. I am 38 years old. I run a company worth $400 million. And 2 weeks ago, I found my husband digging graves in a cemetery. Not because he was dead, but because my father made sure no one would ever look for him there. He had been missing for 8 months. No calls. No messages. No trace. My father told me he ran away with another woman. My lawyers told me to move on. Everyone around me said the same thing. Let him go, Sophia. You're too powerful to waste time on a man who left. But here is what nobody knew. I never stopped looking. And what I found didn't just break my heart. It destroyed everything I thought I knew about my own family. Before I tell you what really happened that night, drop your city name in the comments right now. I want to know where in the world people are watching this story. And make sure you subscribe because this is only the beginning. People always assumed I married beneath myself. That was the polite way they said it. The real way my father said it was much simpler. Sophia, that man has nothing. He said it the first time he met Owen Hartwell at our kitchen table 7 years ago. Owen had just finished a 12-hour shift at a public hospital where he worked as a nurse. His hands were clean, but his jacket was old. My father looked at him the way you look at something that does not belong in the room. But Owen never flinched. He shook my father's hand firmly, looked him directly in the eye, and said, "Sir, I may not have much money, but I have never broken a promise in my life." My father smiled politely that evening. Later, when Owen was gone, he told me, men like that always break eventually. I didn't listen. I married Owen 6 months later in a small ceremony with 30 people. No grand ballroom. No designer dress. Just the man I loved, and the people who actually mattered. My father attended, but left before the cake was cut. That told me everything. For 6 years, Owen and I built a quiet life together. We had a son named Theo, who was 4 years old and obsessed with trains and the color yellow. Owen worked long hospital shifts. I ran the company my grandfather had started and my father had handed to me when I turned 30. We were not perfect. We argued about money sometimes, about how much time I spent working, about the way my father always seemed to insert himself into our decisions. But we loved each other. Genuinely. Completely. Then one morning, 8 months ago, I woke up and Owen was gone. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Theo had a doctor's appointment that afternoon, and Owen had promised to come. I found his side of the bed cold, his phone still on the nightstand, his hospital badge still hanging on the hook by the door. The only thing missing was him. No note. No message. No warning. Just absence. The kind that fills every corner of a house and makes you feel like you are slowly going insane. I called his colleagues. His closest friend, a man named Patrick who had known Owen since medical school, told me he had not shown up for his shift either. That was when my hands started shaking. Owen had never missed a shift in 6 years of marriage. Not once. Not even when he was sick. By noon my father arrived at the house. I had not called him. He simply appeared, composed, suit pressed, as if he had been expecting this. He walked into the living room, looked around slowly, and said 4 words. "He's not coming back." I stared at him. "What do you mean? You don't know that." My father sat down and crossed his legs. "Men like Owen always find a reason to run," he said. "He was never built for this kind of life." Then he placed a business card on the coffee table. "A divorce attorney. Call her Monday morning," he said. "I already explained your situation." 8 months after Owen disappeared, my company acquired a piece of land on the edge of the city. An old property that included a historic cemetery still under municipal care. I visited the site on a Thursday morning with my project manager. It was cold. Fog sat low over the graves. Workers moved quietly around the edges of the property. And then I saw him. A man in muddy boots and a worn gray jacket, pushing a wheelbarrow along the far path between the graves. His back was turned. But I knew that posture. I knew the way those shoulders carried weight, slightly forward, like someone used to working through exhaustion. My feet stopped moving completely. "Miss Hartwell?" My project manager said. I did not answer. I walked across the uneven ground, my heels catching between stones. Closer. Closer. The man stopped the wheelbarrow and bent down to lift something from the ground. Then he turned slightly, and our eyes met across the fog. Owen's face went completely white. For 3 full seconds neither of us moved. Then something broke open inside my chest and I was walking faster. Not running, but almost, until I was standing 2 feet in front of the man I had spent 8 months believing had abandoned me and our son. He looked destroyed. Thinner. Older. His hands were rough and cracked from outdoor work. But his eyes were the same. Tired and full of something I could not name yet. Sophia. His voice came out like a broken thing. I hit him. Open palm across the chest, not his face but hard enough that he stepped back. 8 months, I said. My voice was shaking so badly I could barely form words. 8 months, Owen. Theo asks about you every single night. Every night I tell him Papa is traveling. Every night he puts Owen's hospital badge under his pillow, so he doesn't forget what it smells like. Owen closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. I know, he said quietly. I know, and I am so sorry. But Sophia, if I had stayed, Theo would not be alive right now. The world went silent around me. We sat on a cold stone bench between 2 graves, and Owen told me everything. The night before he disappeared, my father had come to the hospital where Owen worked. Not to the front desk, directly to the staff corridor. He brought one man with him, a large man who said nothing the entire time. My father sat across from Owen in an empty break room and placed a photograph on the table between them. It was a photograph of Theo, at his daycare, playing in the yard, taken that same afternoon. Your father didn't threaten me directly, Owen said. His voice was very steady, which was somehow worse than if he had been crying. He said only one sentence. He said, a boy without a father is sad, but a boy without a mother and a father, now that is a tragedy. My stomach turned completely over. Then he slid a phone across the table, Owen continued. On the screen was a document. A transfer of full legal guardianship of Theo, to your father, already prepared. He said if I did not disappear completely by morning, he would use every lawyer and judge in his network to take Theo away from you permanently. And if I tried to warn you, his man would make sure I never spoke again. I sat very still. The fog was thicker now. A bird somewhere in the cemetery made one sharp sound, and then went quiet. I had nothing, Owen said. No money. No lawyers. No connections. Everything I had was tied to you and your family name. I believed him, Sophia. I believed every word. He looked down at his hands. So I left. I took nothing. I moved between cities. I found this job because it is off the books and cash only. I told myself, if I stayed away long enough, your father would lose interest. If I stayed away long enough, you and Theo would be safe. I looked at my husband, this man my father called worthless, who had given up everything he had to protect our son from the very grandfather who sent Theo birthday cards every month with a smile on his face. I did not cry. Something inside me had moved past tears into a place that was very cold and very clear. Come home, I said. Owen shook his head. Your father. Come home, I said again. I am not asking. My father hosted his annual shareholders' dinner 3 weeks later. 200 people. The ballroom of his main hotel. Every important name in the city gathered under crystal chandeliers to celebrate his empire. I arrived late, which I had planned. Every head turned when I walked in. My father stood near the center of the room with his business partners. When he saw me, he smiled the practiced smile he always used in public, warm and confident and completely hollow. Sophia. He opened his arms slightly. You look wonderful. I was beginning to think you wouldn't come. I almost didn't, I said. But I had something to return to you. I reached into my jacket and placed a single item on the table beside him. The divorce attorney's business card he had left on my coffee table 8 months ago. The room had begun to quiet around us. My father looked at the card. Something shifted behind his eyes. I spent 8 months believing my husband abandoned me, I said. My voice carried clearly across the room. You told me he ran away. You told me he wasn't worthy of our name. You told me men like him always break. I paused. You were right about one thing. He broke. But only because you broke him. My father's jaw tightened. Sophia, this is not the place. You went to his workplace, I said. You brought a photograph of our 4-year-old son. You threatened to take that child away from his mother if his father did not disappear forever. The room was completely silent now. You did this so I would marry the man you chose. So your business deal would go through. So your empire would stay intact. My father's business partner, the man whose son he had wanted me to marry, slowly set down his glass. That is a very serious accusation, my father said quietly. I have Owen's full statement, I replied. Signed and notarized. I also have the security footage from the hospital corridor that night. Your face is very clear on it. I let that sit in the air for one moment. My legal team filed everything this morning. For the first time in my life, I watched my father have nothing to say. I picked the business card back up from the table. I don't need this anymore, I said. Then I dropped it into his empty champagne glass. I already made my choice 8 months ago. I just didn't know I was making it alone. I turned and walked toward the exit. Behind me I heard the sound of chairs shifting, voices beginning, my father saying something I no longer needed to hear. Outside the hotel, Owen was waiting on the steps with Theo on his shoulders. My son saw me first and reached both arms down toward me. "Mama!" he shouted. His voice bounced off the stone walls of the building. I took him from Owen's shoulders and held him against my chest. Over Theo's head, Owen looked at me carefully. "How did it go?" I thought about my father's face in that moment of silence. The way 200 people had watched an empire crack from the inside. "It went exactly the way it needed to," I said. Owen nodded slowly. Then he put his arm around me and we walked to the car together. The three of us, finally in the same place at the same time, finally going home. My father built his empire on the belief that power was everything. He forgot one thing. Power means nothing when the person you underestimated has been quietly building a case against you for 8 months. And she owns the lawyers,